Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Florida Business Forum, Florida's #1 business forum podcast. Here's your information guru and anchorman, Sam Yates.
Wow!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Florida Business Forum podcast. I'm your information guru, Sam Yates, and I just enjoy doing what I do because I enjoy meeting very unique and interesting people. And today, my special guest is Anya Freeman, and the name is one that you're going to want to remember because she has something very, very special. She's the founder and CEO of Kind Designs. And it's a unique company. It's a 3D concrete printing company that does seawalls and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I'm not going to steal her thunder because she is the founder. She came up with this, and I want her to tell you about it. But Anya, welcome to the program today.
Thank you so much, Sam. I'm really excited to be here.
I want to get into all that your company does, but there's always that, to me, being a former, I guess you're always a journalist, but knowing the background and a bit about the person involved, that human touch, that personal touch is very, very important. So tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I was born in Ukraine. I grew up in Israel, and I got the opportunity to come to your amazing country when I was already a teenager, because my dad got a job with the space program. So we all got to move to actually a small town in Maine called Kennebunkport, if anyone has ever been. I was literally their first ESL student. They've never had a foreign student before, which is a very unusual and amazing immigrant experience. And, we came not speaking any English, not knowing anything about American culture, but feeling extremely, extremely grateful to become US citizens and really wanting to make the most of that opportunity. And so my whole family has always had this entrepreneurial spirit. And so my first step, it was really kind of my parents' push more than a step, was to go to law school. That was their American dream, that I would be a lawyer, my brother would be a doctor. We've both since been corrupted, but I did go to law school, and that's how I ended up in Miami, because I got a scholarship to study law at UM. And so I moved to Miami. I did graduate and start working as a lawyer. I had my own law firm doing criminal litigation. So great career, great life, but then started to notice that my home, a beautiful city of Miami, had a huge problem with flooding. Especially, I still live in Miami Beach, but my first 10 years I lived in South Beach on 10th and Jefferson, like right in the heart of South Beach with my friends. And every time it rained, we literally had to rush home and move our cars out of the driveway and out of even our street, because if we left them there, they would float away and you couldn't even get flood insurance for cars anymore. And so I thought, whoa, my friends in other cities are not dealing with this. This is not normal. And it annoyed me that all the attention was just basically doom and gloom articles. Well, you're a journalist, I guess it sells to write about how terrible Miami is, and we're all going to be underwater by 2060, but nobody was talking about solutions. And specifically, nobody was talking about applying technology to find solutions. And so 2 years ago, to my parents' great disappointment, I left behind being a lawyer and I started Kind Designs with the idea of, number one, finding that solution for my hometown. Number two, building technology that was extremely scalable to duplicatable, so we can really make Florida an example and bring this technology to all coastal cities at risk from flooding. Globally, there's 507 cities at risk from flooding and rising sea levels. And number three, we wanted to build something that was awesome for the ocean. So put together a team, raised a seed round last year. That was our first funding round, raised $5 million. Really cool investors like Mark Cuban backed us. The state of Florida backed us through their Florida Opportunity Fund, and started looking into the space. And right away, we started learning about seawalls, which is a very rare product because it has literally never been innovated. We installed the first seawall in the US in 1905 in Galveston, Texas. And it's exactly the same seawall that we're still installing in Florida today. And the problem with these traditional seawalls are, number one, they're extremely expensive. And anyone who's listening that lives on the water knows that, or if they live in a building, the HOA has had to pay for it. It is so expensive, and that it's in fact cost prohibitive for a lot of people who maybe inherited their homes and they don't have $200, $300, $100,000 cash to pay for the seawall. And the second problem is that seawalls destroy marine habitats because they're leaching chemicals into the water, whether it's concrete, steel, or vinyl. All of those seawalls are leaching chemicals, and all of them are flat. So all the organisms that were living by the coast before there was a seawall now have nothing to attach to anchor to, especially during storm events. So they all migrate, and no one is left to eat the toxins in the water. Just between today and 2040, in 15 years, by installing seawalls in the US, we're going to destroy 50,000 miles of marine habitats. That's like driving from Miami to LA to Miami, LA, back and forth 17 times. And so we thought, how do we come up with a seawall that's more affordable? And what if instead of destroying marine habitats, what if the seawall in itself was a marine habitat? And that's how we came up with this idea of 3D printing living seawalls.
When I take a look at your seawall, and you do other products besides seawall, and we'll get into those, but I think you just perfectly captured for our audience, perfectly captured that it is not the traditional seawall. It is alive, and it's the way it is structured. It really takes on a life because it attracts more sea life. Was all of that very, very intentional, or the entire design? It just it didn't happen by accident.
Yes, of course. But also, in some ways, by design, we made the first generation seawall as traditional as possible, actually. And
Yep.
that's structurally. So we could plug our panels into projects that are already in permitting for a concrete seawall. This was really a key to early adoption and how we got in the water in our first year of business. Because structurally, the seawall panels are exactly like precast concrete seawall panels. Same dimension, 10, usually it's 10 by 10 feet, maybe 10 by 12 feet, whatever the plans specify, we customize the panels to those dimensions. Same reinforcement, so same rebar type and spacing, and same weight, and most importantly is same exact engineering and installation. So if you were engineering a precast concrete seawall panel with king and batter piles and a cap, you can engineer our panels exactly the same, and any marine contractor can do the installation with his existing crew, barge, crane. They don't need any special training. So that's how the seawall is identical, and that's how we got in the water so quickly. What's completely radically different, as you mentioned, is made possible through our 3D printing technology. So first of all, we have the world's fastest concrete 3D printer. We're printing a 10 by 10 foot panel in 1 hour compared to what takes a day with precast. And ours cures it fully in 3 days. Compared to what usually takes 3 to 4 weeks. So it's exponentially faster to produce, and that unlocks a lot of these economics. The other thing that's special about the technology, it's also the highest resolution concrete 3D printer. That means the printing layers are really small. They're less than half an inch, and that gives us design freedom previously unachievable. And we capitalize on our design freedom to make all of our seawalls, instead of being flat, which we could 3D print flat panels, of course, but instead of doing that, we make the wet face, the front of the seawall, have a biomimicry design. So it mimics whatever is a local marine habitat. We have a library of designs. So in South Florida, it's mangrove roots. In New York City, we're doing oyster clusters. And the point is to attract native species, to create deep caves. The caves are like 4 foot long caves where the species can hide from predators, and also have a special texture called rugosity. Rugosity is very important for corals, for oysters to anchor to attach to. And because of this design, not only does it function like essentially an artificial reef, which is really cool, it's a seawall and a reef in one, but it also dissipates wave energy. Because you can imagine when a wave bounces against a flat wall, the wave just gets bounced over the seawall, causes more flooding over to the neighbors' yards, across the canal. The macro design of the biomimicry design, whatever it is, actually dissipates 35 to 50% of that wave energy. So half of the overtopping that you would get with a normal seawall. And with all of these environmental benefits, oh, by the way, I didn't mention the material is also environmentally friendly because it doesn't leach chemicals like regular concrete, which has Portland cement. Ours doesn't. With all of those environmental benefits, there is no green premium. The living seawalls are actually the same price and oftentimes cheaper than traditional concrete precast toxic seawalls.
By using a non-Portland cement, are you also circumventing some of the spalling issues that traditional seawalls have with the rebar inside? Is that a side of a positive side effect, perhaps?
No, this is something we're addressing in another way. So
Mhm.
it is crazy to put rebar in the water. I'm very new to this construction space, of course, but right away I start questioning like, why are we putting rebar in the water? Obviously, it rusts. It makes all the sense in the world for buildings. It makes no sense to put it in the water, and there just has never been an alternative. And so we started our first generation seawalls again to not ruffle any feathers, to get into permitting very easily. We started by using exactly the same rebar as precast panels. However, we are in very late stages of R&D for our second generation seawall
Mhm.
panels, where we're actually using zero rebar. It's being reinforced through a 3D printed geometry inside the seawall panel. Basically, the panel
Ah.
is corrugated, kind of like
Mhm.
cardboard is corrugated. You've seen that zigzag between the two boards, and also a proprietary new mix that we're launching. And so the combination of both of those innovation has allowed us to reinforce the seawall without rebar and still achieving the strength that are required for the building department and also to withstand hurricane conditions. That will allow the seawall to be exponentially lighter, so much easier to transport, to install. It's exponentially actually cheaper. You're saving
Mhm.
like $300 per panel by not using rebar. And most importantly, why I am so excited about it is that it's going to transform the longevity of seawalls. Right now, seawalls, because of rebar, even if you're using, by the way, like galvanized rebar, any
Right.
rebar, your seawall is
Right.
still going to fail after about 30 years. By taking rebar out, we can make seawall last over 100 years. And
Yeah,
by the way, at that point, we have a design which is modular. We can keep your
mhm.
seawall, and then as sea levels keep rising, actually remove the cap, add an extension which has an infinite connection into the original panel, and then put the cap back on. So much less construction in the water, so much less production of concrete, and so much less carbon in the environment.
About your team. When I was on the website, and for our audience, I tend to, being a journalist, I tend to drill down a hell of a lot on some things, and it caught my attention when we know you're Miami-based, but on the website it said, "We're a Miami-based team of passionate ocean enthusiasts, divers, surfers, environmental scientists, and sailors who are really disrupting the marine construction industry." Now, that said, when you go to the website and you see the photos, Anya, there is sort of an energy that just jumps right out. First off, you can see that everybody is loving what they do and everybody is getting along. But what a hell of a team. How did you come together? And was it a happenstance that you found people? How did you get that team together?
No, you're right. There's definitely a lot of intentionality around it. We have a very unique, definitely unique team culture, and it's really my obsession. And I'm really just crazy about my team. I've been one of the biggest drivers, besides obviously in completely transforming coastal construction and bringing this innovation to every coastal city at risk. My second driver is to make the entire team financially free for the rest of their life because I'm just in awe of them and how they've been able to bring my dream to a reality. And they're willing to work literally 24/7, weekends, nights. The most memorable days are actually the craziest days, like we talked about before we started recording. And so I'm so grateful to have them by my side. First person to mention that's important is my COO, Jeremy. So he was employee number two, so one of the very first people that I found. And he has an amazing background. He's my technical counterpart. He was employee number seven at the Boring Company with Elon Musk. And many of you know they precast concrete for tunnels. So you've seen them driving the Tesla from LA to Vegas. So Jeremy came when they were in the parking lot of SpaceX, and he scaled production to what it is today. He was there for many years. Now they have like 3 locations in the desert, massive production. So he learned precast there. He was in charge of quality control and production. And then he was recruited by Icon in Austin, Texas, also a very cool company, and with 3D prints houses. They have really cool videos on YouTube. I'm sure you've seen them. They've done beautiful developments. They've raised a crazy amount of money, like $400 million, like $2 billion valuation. Anyway, so Jeremy was leading operations there too. So that's where he learned 3D printing. So he had a very unique combination of precast, concrete, and then 3D printing. So we're super lucky to find him, brought him on, and then we started building the team together. And interestingly, the majority of our team is actually robot operators, so the operations team. And you can't really go to school for that. No one has the right education, so to say. There are no programs for 3D printing, concrete, 3D printing seawalls. We're the first in the world to do this. And that's actually extremely liberating because, I don't care what school you go to. I don't care if you even finish high school, honestly. I care that you have calluses on your hand. I always say that most important because it's extremely difficult physically to operate these robots, pretty extreme conditions. You have to lift 50 pounds every 30 seconds when you're loading the material into the machine. And I tried looking for these people initially in the traditional ways that we all do, like LinkedIn, Indeed, and I was so disappointed, Sam. Everybody was like, I just graduated. I'm looking for a work-life balance. I want to learn. And I was like, no, I'm not here to teach you and to make sure you have a good time. Like, we're here to suffer. We're here to build something massive. And so I was just very turned off by this. I don't know if it's a culture thing, I don't know what it is, but the applicants that I saw were not the ones I was looking for. And ultimately, you're not going to believe it, but the majority of these robot operators I found on Craigslist, which is a website that hasn't changed. And I was using it 20 years ago. I remember I bought like a CDs to learn Spanish. That was like the first thing. By the way, they were fake. They were blank CDs. For Rosetta Stone, I wasted $200. But this time I had so much luck. We found amazing people. A lot of people on Craigslist are people, maybe most immigrants, by the way. Maybe they don't speak English perfectly yet, but they have experience with doing labor, with their hands. And so we built an amazing team that has maybe some of them were architects in Latin America before moving to Miami, but they're not licensed to practice here. All of them were doing some kinds of construction, some kinds of concrete experience. And we did a month-long training, extensive training in operating the robots, in the material science, the design. And what we built is an unbelievable team of badasses, basically. They are world class. They all have equity. They all have ownership in the company. And it's like ride or die every day. And we're all super proud to be the first in the world to do something, to inspire others, to innovate in this space. And it's just an incredible team culture that's extremely exciting and fun. I haven't gone on vacation, 2 years since I started. I don't want to go. People are like, you need a break. This is my break. There's nothing more fun for me than to be in the warehouse with a team.
Right now is a perfect spot for you to tell our audience how they can get in touch with you.
Sure, very easy. It's hello@kinddesigns.com. And we also have a very active Instagram. I'm always posting embarrassing videos of the guys. And it's Kind Designs Official.
Now, how did you come up with the name Kind Designs?
Actually, originally, this was not the name. The name used to be the Addition Company, which I thought was really clever because it's kind of like the boring company. And another word for 3D printing is additive manufacturing. But then I was having to explain it every time, so it wasn't really working. So then we rebranded as Kind Designs, which I really like because Kind represents the impact and Designs represents the 3D printing and the innovation and technology part of what we do. And then we have our cute logo. It's a heart. It's a wave. So it's really the balance of those two aspects.
When we talk about a lot of what you do, you've told us about the concrete, how it's poured, it's molded, it's 3D printed. when you look at new applications, and I want to go into some of the things you're doing now, but looking ahead, you've already talked about a new one with the bridge wraps or the sleeve for the bridges. Are you thinking 5 years ahead? How far ahead are you thinking about the different applications of what your company can do?
Oh yeah, we're thinking minutes ahead, years ahead. We're thinking up to the moment that we exit. So absolutely. And we are extremely hyper focused on seawalls. People reach out to us all the time, like, can you print a house, print a roof? Someone asked us to print a bus stop recently, and I
Really?
don't to do any of that. There are people who can do it already, and they're doing a wonderful job. I am solely obsessed with seawalls and then seawall kind of adjacent products, I would say. So seawalls will be always our bread and butter. We're the only company in the world doing this.
Mhm.
It's a huge market that has
Yes.
massive potential for impact. I don't want to do anything else. However, there are a few products that can go along with the seawall project. One that we found there's a lot of need for is something we started producing at scale just a few months ago with another round that raised another $5 million a couple weeks ago. And we use that to scale production of living tiles. So we have living seawalls that we discussed,
Mhm.
and now we have a new product called living tiles. And tiles are for people who already have a seawall, whether it's concrete, vinyl, or steel, or for projects where you have to use steel. If a seawall is over 20, 30, 40 feet, almost always you have to use steel at that point. So like every port has steel seawalls because those seawalls are like 60 feet high. They cannot use concrete. However, they still want this mitigation, they want this biomimicry effect. So these living tiles are something that you can attach to an existing seawall, whether it's steel, concrete, or vinyl. We have tiles that bridge the corrugation, so it's like a total wallpaper for the seawall. And we have Z-shaped tiles that actually follow the corrugation of the steel.
Mhm.
And they have very similar impact to living seawalls. Of course, we can't achieve the 4 foot deep caves with tiles. They're not as thick as the living seawalls, but it still has the corrugation, the rugosity, the texture,
Mhm.
which is really important. The material, the same material we use for living seawall. And in fact, now we've started doing projects with e-concrete out of Israel. They have an amazing material too, especially for marine applications. And then it has the biomimicry designs. So those are the living tiles. That's probably the second most popular product that we have.
Being a South Florida native, everywhere you go, I recognize it. Some people don't. Mangroves. Mangroves play a critical environmental role in our South Florida environment. Literally, wherever they're growing, they play a critical role. But you have something called mangrove planters that still allows you to reap the benefits of what mangroves do to the environment and the water, but that it still allows you to keep the nice, beautiful views that we all enjoy in South Florida. Tell us about that.
Yes, so we are able to 3D print mangrove planters into the seawall. That becomes part of the biomimicry design. And you can control the height of the mangroves by controlling the size of the roots. And
Mhm.
so the size of the planter can actually, make sure that you still have your view, like you mentioned. And that's a beautiful product because it adds a green actual mangroves in the seawall themselves. So we just started doing that. That one's probably just maybe 1 month ago. We had our first client reach out in the Keys, and it was pretty easy actually to customize our design. And so now we launched a whole new product line.
You also have government contracts. I know that having had experience with DoD clients, when my clients would get contracts, there were always those parts of the contracts that they were blowing the bugle for and saying, "Look at us, we've got this," but there are always some parts of the contract, and I don't want you to reveal anything, but you do have government contracts, I think, that are going to be, knock on wood, taking you all over the world, and it's a part of the NAVSEA project. Can you explain that a little bit for us?
Sure. So I would say it's two categories. One is government contracts where we're actually like specified in seawall plans. We
Mhm.
have 17 projects right now, all in permitting with the city of Miami, for example. They specify us in their plans for living seawalls and for living tiles. City of Hollywood is another city that specifies us in plans. Other times we're bidding on projects after they already have a design, because we didn't exist when they were doing the design. It's too late to be specified. So we bid with a contractor to do those projects. So that's one bucket. The other bucket is actually the Department of Defense grants. As you know, I love America. I'm so patriotic. It's like a dream for me to contribute in any way to our military bases. And one way to do that is actually help fortify them. What we saw, I was shocked when we went to go visit MacDill Air Force Base, for example, in Tampa, which is on the water, is that their runways get flooded. The planes can't take off on many days of the month when there's heavy rain, which results in heavy flooding. And their seawalls are completely dilapidated, and they have a lot of problems fortifying these bases. And so we won both the Air Force Phase 1, which is called AFWORKS grant, and we won the NAVSEA Phase 1, which is the Navy grant. And those actually are specifically to do living seawall installations at these bases. So the Air Force one will be at MacDill Air Force Base, and the Navy one will be at a Navy research facility that's right in our backyard in Broward County, which has research, like the buildings, their facilities are literally about to fall in the water because the seawall is completely destroyed there. And that will be the tallest seawall we've ever done. It's going to be 25 feet high, living seawall, which is more than double of what we've done so far. So it involves a lot of innovation. Because that's the thing with these Department of Defense grants. It's not for you just to sell things you already have on your shelf.
Right.
There has to be a big innovation component to it. So we're really pushing the limits with the structural capabilities of these seawalls and including the height.
From an investor standpoint, do you still need additional investment? Are you always on the search for investment?
We are so lucky. Both of our rounds we were oversubscribed. Last year we were oversubscribed. This year, literally 2 weeks ago, we closed the round. So we got to choose the investors. They're all strategic. They either have a government background or construction background, or they're just cool, like Mark Cuban, just in the cool category.
Right.
But I'm always, of course, talking to people. I mean, we already closed this round, but already I'm talking to investors for a Series A. We're going to do a huge round next year. We have a lot of runway because of this round to pump up our revenue, so we can have a huge valuation and raise a big round to scale outside of Florida next. So big part of what I do is to constantly talk to strategic investors.
Awesome. One more time, how can they get in touch with you then?
It's hello@kinddesigns.com. We'd love to hear from you.
We've covered a lot of territory. We've touched on a lot of topics. Is there anything we haven't touched upon that you want to make sure you share?
No, Sam, you are an amazing journalist. I loved your questions, and it's been really a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share more about our technology and our mission.
Well, you may have thanked me too early because I always save the toughest question for last.
Oh no, what is it?
Will you be able to come back for another episode?
I would love to, of course. Thank you, Sam.
Great. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that it has been my pleasure to have this conversation with Anya today. In previous years of what I used to do for a living, it would be called an interrogation, but today it's a conversation, and I take great pride when I am having that conversation with someone that has your skills and talent. So it has been my pleasure, Anya, to have you here.
Thank you so much, Sam. We'll talk soon.
We will indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, you have that right from Anya. She's going to come back for a future episode, and I'm the kind of person that's going to hold her to it because I want to hear more. I want to know what's going on. So with that in mind, I'm going to thank Anya again and say, I'm Sam Yates. I want to thank all of you for joining us here on the Florida Business Forum. We've created this program because the business industry tends to sometimes forget that there is business news right in our communities here in Florida, and we're going to expand that all over the country. But for now, I want to leave you with one thing, and that is always keep charging forward. Right, Anya?
That's right.
All right. I'm Sam Yates, and in the meantime, have a great day, everybody. You've been listening to Florida's #1 Business Forum podcast. Thanks for listening. Until our next episode, stay tuned for more business.